Welcome back to the Broken Crayon Still Color podcast. I'm your host, Shelly Hitz, and today's guest is Tiffani Riveron. Hi, Tiffani.
Hi, Shelly.
So good to have you. And, I really appreciate the courage of all of our guests. And in our society, depression, anxiety, and panic attacks are realities that many of us face, even when in Christian ministry. However, I've really not heard too many people willing to really talk about it and pull back the curtain and reveal the real struggles they face. So in today's episode, Tiffani is going to share what was her well-kept secret for years and how she found healing and freedom. So thank you so much for being here, Tiffani, and I really appreciate your willingness to share with us today.
Thank you for having me, Shelly, and I'm just glad to be able to share really what God's done in my life. So I'll just start off with my broken crayon experience. I experienced depression during my teenage years and finally struggling with anxiety and panic attacks. And I was a Christian, and it was in the midst of serving as a missionary in another country. And depression would always come and go in my life, but the pinnacle of my health issues, I'd say, was the panic attack and the anxieties that I experienced. And again, I was on the mission field. And I always thought Christians didn't have any business being depressed and with panic attacks. So like you said before, this was my secret shame. And those who knew me, they never really would even fathom that I suffered in this way. So I just want to tell you a little bit about a panic attack, because for those people that don't know, you kind of say, what is a panic attack?
Yeah.
But those that are listening, what happens is it's like your heart is literally racing and pumping out of your chest, and you could be kind of sweaty and cold and clammy all at the same time, but it feels like whatever area you're in is just closing in on you. And you feel like you're suffocating and that you're going to literally die from suffocation.
Wow.
And yeah, it's something you really can't describe unless you've gone through it, and you actually feel like you're taking your last breaths in life. You try to scream out, but your voice doesn't come out, or your mind thinks that it doesn't, and it's just crazy things that happen, and you ultimately feel helpless and hopeless.
Wow.
So
yeah, and that is a powerful thing that you were talking about, just how on the outside everything looked okay.
Yeah.
Your social media profile would have looked like Tiffani was rocking it. She's a missionary. She's out there serving God. And yet you had this inner struggle, and so many of us can relate. So many of us can relate to having it all together and yet having issues. Like, I struggled with a pornography addiction for 2 years when I was in Christian ministry as a married woman. And so tell us a little bit more about what was like your rock bottom place, or just the turning point for you.
Okay, well, first I'd like to mention that I don't know what God's thoughts are, because the Bible says his ways are high above our ways and just incomprehensible. But I believe that God brought the situation in my life, my broken crayon experience, for 2 reasons. The first reason, it was for God to show me that I am not in control.
Amen.
I have a major control issue. And to be honest, it still creeps up at times. But panic attacks was one of the ways that my body tried to fight against the power struggle of me not being able to get the control that I wanted. So in this experience, God showed me my battle with self-will. And the second thing, I believe he gave this to me as like a thorn, because I'm able to help others in what I'm doing now with this broken crayon experience. And the lowest point in the whole experience was fear. I used to be paralyzed by fear not to go out of my room, my house where I was at, because I feared my next attack. I lived from panic attack to panic attack. It wasn't from day to day or week to week or month to month. It was not in calendar speaking, it was in panic attack speaking. So my fear was I would be out and this would happen to me, and no one would know how to help me. And I used to fear that I would die, literally, because of all the physical phenomena that happens to you, that I fear dying and being exposed and people not knowing what to do. So my turning point, it was really coming to the realization that God had not given me a spirit of fear,
Amen.
but of power and of love and a sound mind. And that sound mind means disciplined mind. And in the middle of the panic attacks, I would pray and quote verses and cry out to Jesus. I did everything I thought was the right thing to do, but nothing seemed to work. So here's what happened. When I was in a normal state of mind, and I mean, I wasn't like flipped out all the time, it was more normal than not normal. But when I was in the normal state of mind, I came to the realization that God did not give me that spirit of fear, but rather he wanted me to have a sound and disciplined mind. And some people may be questioning right now, yes, God did allow me to go through the mental health trauma, but it wasn't of God. My panic attacks stemmed from my own desire for control. It was my self-will, my inward lack of dependence on God, but reliance on myself. And now, I didn't know all of what I'm mentioning to you right now at that time. It has taken me years to figure this out. And I've been able to figure out the hows and whys of God's hand that I can see, that he's allowed me to see, and the hurt and the control issues. I couldn't figure all that out until I was willing to open myself up to the Lord. I cried unto him, Lord, search my heart, try me, and show me my wickedness and my shame, and help my hurt, and most importantly, make me dependent on you. And I wanted so badly to experience his hand and his glory, especially in this situation in my life. So that's kind of the turning point and how it all progressed and what happened there.
Yeah, and there's so much wisdom packed in that. And I think that, our listeners are all in different places, all in different stages, and even people who deal with these types of issues, the root could be different things, but I think it's just so much wisdom about that desire for control and just really learning to lean in and depend on Christ and on him, because that's a daily struggle for me.
Yes.
And I think it's just such a great example. And so are you to the point now where you're not having the panic attacks anymore?
Right. I can feel when it's coming on again, it's that ultimate control. When I'm in a situation and I know that at any time it could come. I'm never like decades away from it. It's right here and present, but God has showed me how to basically stop and then fully depend on him. So no, I don't experience him. I can't even tell you the last time that I went through it, but I can tell you that if I allow myself to be dependent on myself and control, extreme control, I know it could come back at any time. I'm not above it. Yeah,
and that's, I think, a beautiful expression of what many of us face that have struggled with something, in the past. It's like we're healed, we are free, but it doesn't mean that it's never a struggle or a temptation or something again. That's how I feel sometimes with pornography. But, as we start to close this session, and I could talk with you forever, Tiffani, but if you could give one piece of advice or encouragement to our listeners, what would it be?
Well, I want to talk to those that have panic attacks and can identify what I'm about to say.
For sure.
if you're honest and you've experienced panic attacks for any length of time, then you know that secretly it's easy to crave that feeling and adrenaline that's felt during the peak of an attack. And so for better explanation for those of you listening, it's like a high, but in a different sort of way. And those of you that had them before, I want you to believe and read and quote and realize and know in your heart the Bible verse that God tells us He did not give us a spirit of fear. It's very addictive, Shelley, and it's a feeling, and I've experienced it before. And if you are there where I have been, I want you to reach out for help. I'm not necessarily saying go straight to the doctor's office, and I do like to put a disclaimer. Some people do need medical and pharmaceutical treatment to balance things out in their body, and people told me that I did as well. But in the end, what I did was I sought the help of those who loved me and knew me, and in the end, God directed my steps. And those around me, they had no idea how to help me. Because like I mentioned before, and you mentioned too, Shelley, the mental illnesses are sometimes hush-hush in the Christian realm.
Exactly.
But they're real, and they do exist. But me exposing myself to others and humbling myself before God, God was able to lead me in being my own counselor and seeking help from Him. And He allowed me to work through those issues through personal soul searching and the prayers of others. And the awesome power of God was poured out in my life. And God, Shelley, let me tell you, He healed me, He cleaned me, He showed me, and He showed me His power and His glory that was able to filter my thoughts and make me little and Him my all in all. So that's my advice for anyone that's listening that's going through what I've gone through before.
Yeah, amen. And I really do appreciate you talking about this, because we do need to talk about it. We need to be talking about these types of things in the church. We need to be offering hope, and we need to be sharing the realities of life. And so I just really appreciate you sharing. And if someone would want to get in touch with you, how could they get in touch with you?
They could go to Tiffani Riveron, TiffaniRiveron.com.
Awesome. Well, you know, I could, like I said, I could talk with you forever, but you know, in closing, I really believe your story again shows that God can take our mess and turn it into a masterpiece.
And Shelley, with that being said, I want everyone to know my name is Tiffani Riveron, and I am a masterpiece.
Oh, you are, and God is using you in powerful ways, and He has created something incredible with your life. So thank you so much for joining us today and for listening in. If this episode inspired you and you would love to share your story, or you know someone who has a story to share, come over to shelleyhitz.com/story and apply. And we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.